People often ask me, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Well, I say dementia is a syndrome and Alzheimer's is a disease. They usually go away happy with that answer, but is it complete? Is it possible that doctors themselves are a bit convoluted on this question? Let's take a look. Hi, I'm Dave Brown. Welcome to the Dementia Monster channel. So, what are Alzheimer's and dementia? What's the difference between a disease and a syndrome? Well, in principle, Alzheimer's is a disease in which brain cells die, likely due to the buildup of plaques on brain cells. These plaques are composed of a polypeptide called amyloid beta. At the same time, skeletons within the cells, called microtubules, fail due to deficiencies in a protein called tau. They then collapse into what's called a tangle. In the year 1901, a 51-year-old German woman named Auguste Deter, suffering from severe dementia, was brought to a psychiatrist and neuropathologist named Alois Alzheimer. After Frau Deter died, Dr. Alzheimer examined a sample from her brain under a microscope and first identified the plaques and tangles. So the disease characterized by plaques and tangles was given the name Alzheimer's disease. Now, as a rule of thumb, we can only see these during an autopsy, but there are other causes of dementia than Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is a syndrome and not a disease. A syndrome is just a set of symptoms without regard to what's causing them. In fact, some count 30 or so diseases and disorders that could cause dementia, while some claim to count as many as 100. But in the United States, the Alzheimer's Association says that 60 to 80% of dementias are caused by Alzheimer's. Sounds pretty straightforward. Someone has dementia, and we diagnose the causing disease or other disorder. We put a label on it, and everything is neat and tidy. Right? Well, not so fast. 2 years ago, I was told by a neurosurgeon who is up on this stuff that he expects the term Alzheimer's to disappear in a few years. There's just too much confusion about it. You can see the problem, can't you? Without the autopsy, it's hard to definitively say that someone with dementia has Alzheimer's. Now, there are new blood tests and other new diagnostic tools to help narrow things down, but it's still confusing. So confusing that even doctors are sometimes confused. So over the years, the medical community has regrouped a couple of times to try to narrow things down. Now, part of the narrowing process has been to try to clearly define the stages of the different dementias. After all, they don't all go through the exact same sequence. The first major stab at this was in 1984 by the Department of Health and Human Services Task Force on Alzheimer's disease. This rubric held until the end of the first decade of the new century, when another task force took another crack at the problem. This was done by the National Institute on Aging in 2011. That seemed to work for a while, but there was still a need to standardize the nomenclature and diagnostic process more. So in 2023, under the National Plan to Address Alzheimer's Disease, a publication called A New Framework for Dementia Nomenclature was released. As a framework, it was only a proposal for how to go about solving the confusion, boiling it down to this graphic. So the project has a long way to go before the residual confusion is dispelled. So how should Alzheimer's be diagnosed? Tests like the Mini Mental Status Exam or the Montreal Cognitive Assessment are screening tests that only take a few minutes and can be performed by a primary care provider in his office. I received both tests in 2015 and did badly on both of them. The diagnosis process normally includes interviews with family and/or other assessments of behavioral changes. Some doctors, perhaps inappropriately, might make a positive diagnosis at this point with only the interviews and the screening test results. But if the screening test didn't go well, a better approach is to apply a serious battery of neuropsychological tests lasting 1 to 3 hours. These tests probe many parts of the brain, not just for memory problems. And then it's common to look for biomarker evidence of a specific disease, perhaps through an MRI or a PET scan of the brain, or one of the new blood tests that appear to be pretty reliable. MRIs of my own brain in 2017 and 2018 were for someone in memory care. Now, I'm not a doctor. I just read a lot of stuff and I talk to people. But it seems to me that you may be able to conclude that someone has dementia through interviews and the cognitive tests, but a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease should follow a full battery of neuropsychological tests and then biomarker evidence. Of course, the final biomarkers are the plaques and tangles you find in the autopsy. In the 3 studies of the nomenclature problem we discussed before, all saw the biggest challenge in diagnosis as eliminating other causes of dementia. Is it due to a stroke? Is it a vitamin deficiency? Is it due to Lewy bodies or frontal temporal dementia? Once you recognize a syndrome, then you need to whittle down the possible causes. So the short answer to the question we began with is dementia is a syndrome, while Alzheimer's disease is, well, a disease. Also, since dementia is a syndrome, it's not a diagnosis. So you can be found to have dementia, but a diagnosis establishes what disease or disorder is causing the dementia. Well, I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. We have links in the show notes below to our sources, our blog, and our book. If you found this interesting, I hope that you'll give it a like, share it with someone else, maybe share some of your own thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks and have a great day.